For example, the Swedish FSA opened up an innovation center, finding ways to contribute and to work together with the business rather than to counteract and hold back. And I think that is the approach that we must have on all fintech areas. But of course, there has to be a balance as well, and there is, of course, always a risk. We have the consumer investor protections, where, of course, it's easy to say that if you make bad financial decisions, that's your own risk, your own fault. But it's harder as a politician when you speak to a retired person who says that, whoops, that was my pension that went overboard, and feel the need for some sort of protection, because I know there are many who give bad advice in the financial markets as well. And of course, as politicians, we have to make sure that the customers, the consumers, also have some level of protection in these markets.
Can I?
Absolutely.
The Australian and Swedish wars on cash are terrible, and they threaten the national security of the nations that engage in them. So if you live in Europe, you have a neighbor in this area called Russia, and every once in a while they invade their neighbors, and it's not that great. So
I can agree on that, yeah.
some Baltic countries kind of team up and run some exercises in the event that that may occur. And some of you guys join NATO and hope to rely on, being a member of a larger team. And so, it's all fun and games to worry about making big returns, but every once in a while a bad thing happens, and you have to be prepared for it. And if Russia or another actor attacks this nation, one of the first things that will go down is your networking. And that means you're not going to have any Bitcoin transactions, and you're not going to have your stupid cards that barely work anyway. Rub my chip. Can we do it again? This isn't even English. It sucks. It's terrible. Destroying cash, one, removes all the privacy from human beings, which quenches their speech. It makes it harder for people to speak truth when they're constantly monitored. The only true speech can exist when a person can speak without repercussion. And if everything that you say is monitored because you paid for it with your trackable credit card, like in the UK, if you say the wrong thing, the police knock on your door. That crap is not fostering a free and open environment and exploration of ideas. It's draconian and it's terrible. And the fact that you guys are removing cash is just basically removing national security in the event of network being down. Now you guys can't use taxis anymore because you don't have a working currency because you went purely digital in a world where digital doesn't work half the time. I mean, a UK bank just had its ATMs and cards down for several weeks, and it was a rather large bank. So cash is important. It's important for privacy. It's important for free speech. It's important so that you don't have to have your eyeballs on what my diet behaviors are if I'm insured, right? I don't need my health insurance premiums modified on your draconian monitoring of how I use my credit card. They all lose the data anyway. Everything you capture will be lost. So I hate the fact that you guys hate cash. It really bothers me. You guys and Australia.
So,
Just
Jessica,
just to make a short point, sorry, Jessica, just to clarify, the government has not issued a policy that says that we should be a digitalized economy. We haven't stated that we should get rid of cash. This is something that is driven by the consumers and the providers, the banks. And of course, we feel that consumers should be able to make their own choice in these issues. And if people feel comfortable using cards, even though some other people think it's stupid, I mean, it should be the consumer choice.
Not really. You're in the business of protecting consumers, right? And if part of protecting consumers is making sure that they don't get preyed upon by data, like every piece of data you lose can be used to impersonate you and cause you to incur debts that you're going to be forced to pay. If someone gets a mortgage in your name in the United States, you do actually get screwed up for that. It does have a financial cost to you. So you should be interested in protecting your citizens from the data carnivores out there that will attack them with this over-eyeballing of customers for particularly no good reason. And it's not just the evil companies that take advantages, it's also other nation states. The entire secret database of top-level securities in the United States was leaked and lost to China, which didn't help America. And you can't go rewrite those things. You can change your password, but you can't change your birth date, and you can't change your relationships that you grew up with. That data is lost forever. The only way to protect people's data is to stop them from giving it away so much. So you may not be on team evil trying to kill cash. You're not exactly on team good trying to keep it alive.
Jessica?
Actually, we are.
Well, it's an interesting twist in this debate. You advocating cash, and we're sitting here
We want to be
promoting more digital means. I mean, it's very interesting in the debate in general. Just a few years ago, everything was supposed to be digital, and now we're all thinking Russia, and now we're encouraging people to stick cash under their mattresses and all that. So of course, we have to make sure of both things, to say the very obvious. And I just have to go to a meeting and meet particularly older people to definitely be certain that there's a future for cash as well the coming years, to say the very least. But still, I agree that this is very much consumer driven, and it's. The data issue is, of course, central. I mean, that's a tricky topic. Because normally, actually, we have a pretty tough legislation when you look at, to use the Swedish phrase, but Datainspektionen or other authorities who are constantly trying to make sure that we cannot test new technology. We could not test autonomous vehicles because then they have a camera on them and then they can spot something that someone can use in a bad way. And that's important, of course, but my perspective is that we in general have pretty tough regulations concerning data, and look at the general data protection regulation that has just come into force. That also is giving more power to the consumer. So I think I still think we need to see people as grown-ups, actually, and that a lot of people want to share their data with others.
I can tell you there is a Swedish politician who I disagree with vehemently on his choice of cryptocurrency. His name's Rick Falkvinge. He's the leader of the Pirate Party. He actually does have some good thoughts in his head, and one of them is that we need a digital analog of a digital representation of our analog rights. So back when you used to send mail to another person, the idea, the concept that someone would open that mail and read it before it got to their destination was unthinkable, was unconscionable. But the fact that you guys in Europe have made a law that you retain every single SMS message for a couple years, well, that's the exact opposite, isn't it? So if I communicate with somebody by mail, I'm protected. But if I communicate with somebody by SMS, I'm screwed. Well, that's odd. It's odd that we have this disconnect between the rights that we fought so hard for in the analog world, and now in the digital world, we just don't care anymore. It also exists with the Fourth Amendment in the United States. You know, you have a right to be free of unreasonable search and seizure, and only upon writ from a judge describing exactly the location and description of what is being searched for can that right to privacy be abridged or annulled. Well, at the border, they decided you don't have those rights anymore. We can ask you for the password to your phone, like in Canada, they won't let you in. You come to Canada, they ask you for the password for your phone, you give it, or they bounce you. And they bounce a lot of people. That's disgusting. You know what's in my phone? A lot of naked pictures of people. Some of them of me, sorry. Some of them other people. None of us probably need your $8 an ass looking at our pictures. $8 an hour paid, dude. Like, it's disgusting that people have forgotten how hard we worked to get those rights in the first place, and to use that as a reference point for the digital laws would be wonderful. And as far as your Data Protection Act goes, it's a joke. You can mandate that people try hard, and they will try hard, and then they will fail because security's hard. The only way to protect people's data is to not capture it. If you capture it, it will be lost, period.
So we've spoken a lot about data, but something else that is very interesting to the whole crypto community in Sweden is the topic of national cryptocurrencies. And we touched on the fact that Sweden is becoming more and more cashless, and even the Swedish central bank is looking at it and thinking, what does it mean for our national security, as you, Richard, said? If both Visa and MasterCard stopped working, suddenly no one can buy food, you can buy anything. And so therefore we have this notion of e-krona, the Swedish digital cash. So what is your view on that? If we start with Per, when it comes to national cryptocurrencies in relation to the independent cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, what is their relation to each other?
Well, I think that the national cryptocurrencies, the e-krona, is of course at a very early stage, so is not possible to say very much about it because the Riksbank has to do a lot of work before we can really see any results and any concrete ideas around that. But of course, it builds on the same general idea that in a digitalized economy, how can we provide meanings of payment in different ways? And you can say anything you want about cryptocurrencies, and they have great possibilities and opportunities. But in the general public, there is also a skepticism about this. I mean, a hesitancy to use it. There's not enough knowledge. We've seen the volatility on the market. If I sit on a Bitcoin today, how much will it be worth tomorrow or in 5 years' time? And no one can tell. So, of course, if we want people to use digital currencies, there could be a good idea to have a trust provider saying that we issue this, we are some sort of guarantee for this currency. This is, of course, the opposite idea of Bitcoin, where there's no such guarantee at all. And perhaps both these ideas are valid and have the possibility to coexist, at least for time in the future. So which system will win in the end? Well, who knows? We'll have to see. But that is also the reason why I think we should have the policy to let many flowers bloom at this moment where so much is happening. And then eventually we'll see if the national digital currencies take over the game or if it's the other cryptocurrencies.
I think that the currency you can get rich on has a pretty big advantage over the currency that keeps becoming worth less. So if you look at the kroner, it's got a whole lot of digits on the end, right? You could pay 10 euros or you could pay 100 kroner. Well, why is there so many digits? Because they kept printing it and printing it and printing it. So they have a bunch of stupid zeros at the end of their currency now. Some countries have more, some countries have less. I don't think an intelligent investor with more than his petty cash would be wise to invest in the cash that goes down 3 to 5% a year just to inflation. And that's assuming that your central bank doesn't decide to just print more. Not exactly. In the United States, we have a Fed, which is its own separate entity from our actual elected officials. So the people that choose our interest rates and our issuance rate are not elected, which is a little weird. How do you guys do it here? Do you guys have a separate team, or does your government elected people do it?
No, the central bank is independent from the
independent as well
from the government. Yeah.
All right.
And that's the whole of Europe has the same system as well.
That is actually an interesting point you brought up, and I would like to hear Jessica's opinion on the fact that with national cryptocurrencies, you can control inflation. The government will be in control. With Bitcoin, for example, there is no way for one single government to control the inflation and do monetary policy in their country. So do you think it is even possible to have such a currency in Sweden where when the central bank doesn't control anything?
Well, it's pretty far off from where we are right now, so I can only speculate about that. I think, however, that this whole all these different cryptocurrencies growing or being developed, I think that it puts a sound pressure, I would say, on the central bank system. I was invited to this seminar about the Swedish e-crown. However, it was cancelled, so I guess the interest in general wasn't that big. But I think it's good that the central bank has to think about its ways of doing things, and in the long term, that goes back to us as politicians as well. So I'm not sure about your specific question, but going back to the broader perspective, since I mean Per knows all these financial markets perspective a lot better than me. I'm the more broader digital, working every day in the parliament. I see the big issue for all different kinds of blockchain technology is trust. That's the basic problem. I mean, I'm working a lot on digitalization of healthcare or the welfare system in general, public sector, or whatever. And whether you're speaking about cryptocurrencies or blockchain in general, the big problem is trust. And I think that's something we have to work together with authorities, with policy, and also the business in itself. And then you can discuss how much it should be regulated or not. But if it's not regulated, you probably won't have the trust, and then you won't see this technology being used in very many ways.
Something very interesting is also that different countries do national cryptocurrencies for different reasons. So in Sweden, we have the case that we are cashless, and that is the reason why the central bank is thinking about how can we create digital cash. But then you have, for example, countries such as Venezuela. they want to circumvent sanctions. So they want to create their own national cryptocurrency so they can transact globally without using the traditional finance infrastructure. So Richard, what is your view on all of these national cryptocurrencies in comparison to Bitcoin? Is it interesting at all to you, and what does it mean for the whole crypto space?
Basically, crypto was created to fix the problems of government. You know, the first block ever mined, the Genesis block, you know, I believe there's some text, either if not encoded in it, but released along at the same time of it, that says that British Chancellor on verge of another bailout for banks, where the government will unfairly benefit those who have friends in high places. For instance, lenders, right? So people will take huge loans, huge loans, huge loans, make mad gains, mad gains, mad gains, until it goes wrong. They privatize the gains, they socialize the losses. And that doesn't let capitalism work properly. If you have somebody like that, all right. If you privatize the gains and socialize the losses, it unfairly enriches the capital class that's in control of who kind of gets into office. So that system can't be cured from the inside pretty much. It's basically lost. You can do some things with runoff voting that help, and you know, getting rid of first past the post, and there's some other things you can do to try and fix politics, but the problem of needing to print money to pay bills, it's not going away. These guys have bills they have to pay, and they're denominated in their local currency, and they're going to keep printing that local currency to pay those bills until the game stops. So whether they digitize that bad system of generating debt that's unsustainable on a population that's decreasing in size, so their debt that they've incurred borrowing all that money for all those years, they have to pay back now with a smaller working group of people, because people stopped having kids. So if people kept having sex and having kids, that debt would be spread across a lot more folks. Now those folks are screwed. Japan's more screwed than you guys, but you guys aren't really having too many kids. You might want to get more religious around here to start popping out kids.